Well, the answer is quite obvious. Everyone would die. Be sure to like and subscribe. Peace. Well, I assume you came for more than just that, so let's at least make it an interesting story to tell. Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. Now, let's get into the video. Saitama in series has always been an upstanding hero. While he does seem like he cares about little, he does value his job as a hero, and in a way is perhaps the most heroic character in the series, as he is a superhero not because it'll make him popular, though he isn't opposed to that. He's a hero because it's what is right. It was always his dream to be a hero, and from a young age he was always bullied and weak. It was from these experiences, as well as his sudden instinctual movements during his meeting with the monster crab Lante, where he saved a kid with a cleft chin from death, that he decided to fulfill his dreams of becoming a hero. This kid, of course, was the grandson of a multi-millionaire who then went on to found the Hero Association. Saitama from here would work his body to the bone, pushing his weak and devoid of potential frame to near death just to grow stronger until eventually he somehow managed to break his limiter, which all creatures possess to keep them from growing too strong and losing purpose. This led to the birth of the strongest hero in all history, though it takes the world a long time to realize the true extent of his power, with even Garo, the only person who could ever realize his true extent, completely lost track of it during their battle as his strength soared so high that Garo simply couldn't measure it anymore. However, it's lonely at the top. Saitama always had high expectations for other villains, but very few of them ever met his expectations, if any. Among a few that seemed to give him a run for his money were both Garo and Boros. However, Boros was still destroyed quite easily, with him noting Saitama was holding back. And Garo also seemed to push Saitama to his limits. And it was at this point that we came to realize that Saitama's power was still growing. This was the effect of limiter removal. It doesn't just grant incredible strength, it grants immeasurable growth. But therein lies the issue. Saitama sits at the top of the food chain, and there is nobody who can really challenge him. This isn't too far removed from Boros. Boros traveled through the universe as a universal emperor like Frieza, where he committed genocide on hundreds of worlds, all in the name of finding someone who could actually oppose him. He found just that on Earth, as well as his own demise at the hands of Saitama. So let's once more visit the concept of if Saitama were a villain. How would this go? Well, if we all remember, Saitama wasn't quite treated well after the destruction of the meteor. People began to criticize him for the destruction of the city, with even higher class heroes mistreating him because of it. There was also that one time when Saitama mentioned that he could have easily ended up like Hammerhead of the Paradisers. So let's think for a moment that at the time of the meteorite's destruction that Saitama lost his taste in heroes. That he began to realize that heroes were just people seeking attention and could so easily be villains as well when it suited them. Given that his dream job of being a hero had flopped due to him having gained so much power that there was very little excitement like he had hoped, perhaps he would begin to consider a new dream, one where someone could finally match him. So Saitama would set out to find someone worthy of him. At this point, his path would differentiate from the norm. However, this doesn't mean that he wouldn't still fight villains. He would, but he would also fight heroes. He would be searching for a true challenge. So now let's get into our little what if. Saitama, after having been disgraced as a hero for destroying the meteorite, had realized that being a hero sucked. Returning home, he'd be thinking about it all night. Genos would notice. It's not exactly that Saitama was being uncharacteristically quiet, it was that he wasn't doing much of anything except staring at the ceiling. Something was on his mind. Genos would ask what's going on, and Saitama would mention how he was considering quitting his hero job. Genos would be surprised and would ask why, since it was his dream. Saitama would mention that things had gotten too easy and that nobody was ever a challenge to him. The spark had gone out. Genos would just continue washing the dishes after hearing that. Saitama would lose interest in doing hero work and mostly ignores things, including weakling sea folk talking about an attack. However, when the Deep Sea King shows up, Saitama gets excited. Saitama would rush out, taking down any sea folk that get in his way. He would eventually find the Deep Sea King, who was on the verge of killing Moomin Rider. Saitama would ask Deep Sea King if he was strong, and the Deep Sea King would laugh at the concept, stating that he is beyond strong. Saitama would challenge him to a fight and would manage to beat him in a single punch, much to Saitama's own disappointment. With Deep Sea King's demise, the invasion of the Sea Folk comes to an end, and Saitama would casually return home to watch TV or read manga. Saitama would receive a letter of summons to the Hero Association's headquarters. However, he ignores it, crumpling it up and tossing it into the trash can. It wouldn't be long after that the Alien Conquerors arc would occur. Giving Genos his rank, he'd be called up for discussion, which Genos begs Saitama to come as well. Saitama wouldn't be very interested, but assuming that if all of these S-rank heroes are being called up, then something dangerous might be coming. Perhaps something worthy of his power. So he would go. He would be ignored by Atomic Samurai, and Tatsumaki would disapprove of his presence. Saitama would only see this as more unwarranted hostility towards someone who had saved the world so many times. The meeting would begin, and it would be here that they would be informed that within the next half year, something dangerous would occur. This excites Saitama, who thinks that finally something worthy would be coming in his direction. To his good fortune, before he even leaves the building, this event occurs. The entire building shakes, and a would-be invasion of the Sky King begins, but is immediately ended by the arrival of a massive extraterrestrial battleship that had just entered Earth's atmosphere. This warship belongs to the evil Universal Emperor, Boros. Saitama wastes no time hogging the action for himself, rushing up to the vessel to do battle with whatever awaited him. Saitama would be quickly met by Grorybas, who Saitama would ask if he were the leader. Grorybas would admit that he is not and tells Saitama to prepare to die. Saitama paints the walls in the alien's blood and moves on as if nothing happened. He's here for the big fish and won't settle for less. As he makes his way deeper into the ship, he receives a telepathic warning from Giryugenshub telling him not to go any deeper, though Saitama ignores this, knowing that if he continues he'll be forced into confrontation with those more deserving than past enemies. Saitama would be attacked from behind by Giryugenshub's telekinesis, throwing rocks at him, but the attack doesn't even faze him as he finishes the battle with a rock of his own. Saitama is slowly getting more and more disappointed. As he makes it to the throne room, Saitama would already have low expectations. Boros would begin to converse with Saitama, telling him that he's been traveling the universe, searching for the fight he'd been promised years ago by an ancient seer who said that on a distant planet, Boros would finally find someone worthy to fight. Saitama sympathizes with the alien and states that he has found that opponent, though he likely would not survive long enough to enjoy it. He would strike out at Boros, but to his surprise, Boros would survive the attack. Immediately upon seeing this, Saitama is filled with excitement, finding that someone has finally managed to survive his strike, marking this being as the strongest one he has ever fought against. Boros would transform not just once, but twice, going to his fullest power. In this form, Boros is strong enough to kick Saitama to the moon, though Saitama manages to return to Earth by jumping back. Continuing to test this being's full extent, Saitama comes to the realization that while he is strong, he still doesn't compare to Saitama in any serious way, which still brings Saitama disappointment. After managing to blast Boros apart, Boros manages to reconstitute and would then launch his final attack, Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon. Saitama would respond with his serious punch, and this would result in the defeat of Boros. Boros notes that Saitama was still holding back, and he dies pleased. Saitama almost envies Boros at that moment, not particularly because he's dead, but because he finally found someone stronger than himself. This would cause Saitama's wound from being the strongest fighter to slowly deepen as he continues to grow disinterested in the hero's lifestyle. It's here that Saitama gives in completely to his darker impulses. He studies the hero catalog and begins to search for someone strong. If nobody on Earth could match him alone, then maybe they could match him all together. He would begin searching for heroes through the catalog. Genos would ask what he's doing, and Saitama would merely say he's studying the competition. Given that Saitama has easily dropped many dragon-level enemies, and that Boros was the one to come closest to him, he decided to focus on S-rank heroes, since they were logically the only ones with a high enough chance to match him. He naturally wanted to go straight for Blast, who was the #1 hero in the association. However, Blast wasn't someone you could just find. The guy was a mystery, and it seemed that even the advent of the Universal Conqueror Boros was unable to coax him out. So what would it take? Saitama begins to systematically choose targets. He begins to look through the S-class heroes. He knows that he could easily kill Genos, so anyone below Genos on the S-rank list is not worth his time. He also wouldn't target Genos, mostly because he's searching for a real battle, but also because he considers Genos a good friend and wouldn't want to harm him. So who would he target? He begins to choose by strength and power. There are high-up heroes who wouldn't be much fun to fight, such as Child Emperor. While he is strong in his own right, most of his ability and ranking comes from his brain. As such, in an arm wrestling match, Genos would smoke him, so that technically would make him weaker than Genos, and as such takes him off the list. Besides, Saitama doesn't really like to make a habit of painting walls with kids, so he'd move on. On his list, he sets up people he wants to fight the most. These people are Zombie Man due to his immortality, King due to his track record, Atomic Samurai and Tatsumaki because they were ranked high enough, and also because they were asses and needed to be taught a lesson, and Blast for being the strongest and most mysterious hero. He excluded Bang, even though he was third on the list of S-rank heroes, because he has a healthy respect for Bang, and also because Bang seemed helpless in the face of a meteorite which Saitama easily destroyed. So he decided it would be best to find and challenge these heroes, and if they failed to be strong enough, he would begin a new plan that would turn the whole world against him in hopes that he could defeat them. Saitama would sneak out and attempt to find Zombie Man, which wouldn't be as easy as it seems, but upon getting a lead, he would search out and find him. There, the two of them would speak, and Zombie Man would ask what Saitama is there for. Saitama would say that he's tired of not being able to test his strength on anyone. He's upset that nobody can handle his true strength and says he wishes to test himself against the apparently immortal Zombie Man. Zombie Man would eventually relent when Saitama would threaten villainous deeds should he not. The two of them enter battle and Saitama would attempt to go serious mode on him. Now, considering all things, Zombie Man isn't very strong particularly, but he tends to regenerate faster than people can kill him, which makes him incredibly versatile in battle. So him being able to hurt Saitama back is laughable, but Saitama would at least hope that he can take his shots. But the issue with this is that Zombie Man's regeneration is not absolute. While he can regenerate from many attacks, even from supposedly just his head, if you can turn him into minced meat or blow him apart on an intense level, even Zombie Man can't survive it. And Saitama learns that quickly the moment he pops him with a serious punch. It would be raining Zombie Man, and Saitama would just stand there with a twitch, wondering where the match was. He expected Zombie Man to come back to life or something, but he didn't. He was too destroyed to do anything. Saitama had killed Zombie Man so hard that he couldn't come back to life, and this was upsetting. It would be all over the news that Zombie Man had been killed by an unknown assailant. Saitama would then search for Atomic Samurai, where he would challenge him to a duel. Atomic Samurai would say that Saitama isn't worth his time. He only consorts with those who are proven strong. That being said, he only deals with S-rank heroes. Saitama would mention that it was he who had killed Zombie Man, and that he was here to do the same to Atomic Samurai and test out his strength. Atomic Samurai would see the look in Saitama's eyes and know it was true. He would tell Saitama that he would end the battle before it even began and would attempt to cut Saitama apart with a short, quick movement. Saitama would merely catch the blade in his teeth, much to Atomic Samurai's surprise. Saitama would shatter the blade and spit the remnants through Atomic Samurai's head. Saitama would sigh and return home. This also would be on the news, and it would begin to be known that someone was targeting S-rank heroes. Genos would be watching this and mention that it sounds like a strong villain is roaming about, possibly someone else who had learned the secret of how to unlock the power that Saitama was using. Saitama would laugh and say that he wishes it were true. He would search for King, but would be disappointed by the fact that he wasn't strong at all, so he'd leave without doing anything. He would immediately begin searching for Tatsumaki. Upon finding her, he would reveal that he's the one who killed Atomic Samurai and Zombie Man. He would challenge her to a battle. She would be more than eager. She never liked Saitama, and now she has a reason to kill him. She wastes no time going wild attempting to kill him. Her power indeed does offer Saitama a challenge. She almost starts to fulfill his desires, but even she can't push Saitama to his fullest power. And he manages to get through and end Tatsumaki quickly. Saitama would sigh. If even the second greatest hero in the Hero Association couldn't force him to full power, then who could? Well, lucky for him, with the deaths of so many S-rank heroes, including Tatsumaki, the last of which was a battle that the entirety of Z City could witness, they call someone in who might just be able to handle him. No, not Blast. They call in A-rank Class 1 hero Sweet Mask. Sweet Mask himself is not what he seems, however. He possesses incredible strength and regenerative abilities. Saitama would have missed Sweet Mask entirely, as Sweet Mask is the rank A Class 1 hero. However, what he did not know was that Sweet Mask was merely acting as the gatekeeper of the S ranking. Sweet Mask, a hero turned superstar, just so happens to be one of the strongest heroes in all of the Hero Association. Possessing greater strength and durability than even Atomic Samurai, he also possesses regeneration on par with Zombie Man. Saitama does battle with him and finds it incredible that someone like Sweet Mask exists, but sadly, he also isn't up to par and would also be destroyed by Saitama, with even his regeneration being unable to save him from Saitama's strength. Genos would later show up and express his surprise that Saitama could have been the hero killer that the news was talking about. Saitama would mention that while Genos envied his power, that it sucked because he was the strongest and now nothing held a challenge. It was as if life had been turned into a children's game. It was like going from reading War and Peace to Little Critter. From Ulysses to Dick and Jane. It was too easy, and for once, Saitama craved a challenge. The best challenge he could hope for now was the strongest hero, and if that didn't work, he would turn the entire world against him. Genos, remembering how he lost his family to a cyborg, did not want Saitama to become the same to someone else and would fight him. Saitama wouldn't kill him, but he certainly would not let him win. He would put a fist through Genos, severing his upper body from his lower and removing both of his arms. He would leave Genos with a warning not to get in his way again. Saitama would leave. With this done, having lost Sweet Mask and seen Genos put into critical condition, they realize that the only hero left who can stop Saitama is Blast, and so Blast is called in. Blast would be sent to locate Saitama, and upon doing so, he tells him to come with him quietly, but Saitama notes that meeting Blast was the goal of everything he was doing. He would begin the battle by attacking Blast with a serious punch, and amazingly, Blast is able to take it. They begin exchanging blows, and Saitama declares this as the best fight he's ever had. But as they continue to battle longer, Saitama's power slowly begins to eclipse Blast's, and both Saitama and Blast realize that Saitama is still growing stronger even as they speak. Blast hopes to trap Saitama in his portals, but is shocked to realize that Saitama can legit grab the portals and move them with his hand like it was nothing. Blast would be shocked at the concept of someone being able to physically affect a non-physical thing within space-time. Eventually, as they continue fighting, Saitama powers up enough that he realizes that he could kill Blast, and so he does. Saitama is pleased with the battle, but comes to realize that he will never have an equal like this. He thought he was overwhelmingly strong, but he couldn't realize that he was still growing. How was this possible? He had completely shattered his limits, and so the only person in the world who could stand up against Saitama was himself. So he begins to search for a means with which to clone himself. However, he finds out that it won't work, as even if he did clone himself, he wouldn't have his powers. Saitama would turn around only to see Saiko standing there. He would ask her who she is, and she would mention that she is merely someone who wishes to study him. She informs him about how he had removed his limiter, and how she had been doing experiments to do the same. Saitama would ask her to explain. She would mention that all creatures possessed within them a limit to their growth and potential, and that Saitama had removed his own, which explained his explosive strength as well as his rapid growth. The only person who could even match his potential would be a person who had also had their limiter removed. How does one do this? She would ask rhetorically. Near-death experiences. The key to removing the limiter was in supercharging the body and soul by bringing them near death and pulling them back. She asked Saitama if he had ever done that before. Saitama would mention that he had been working out so hard his hair fell out and he vomited blood. She mentions that this would do it. She said that she wanted to run some tests to create monsters as strong as Saitama. Meanwhile, Genos himself is also hoping to find a way to defeat Saitama. He would enlist Child Emperor's help in finding a way to deal with Saitama. Genos speaks of finding a way to replicate Saitama's powers, and so Child Emperor would begin searching for anything and everything that could explain Saitama's power. Genos would bring in various other scientists to aid in this effort, and eventually they would all come to the same conclusion. Saitama's power is based upon the removal of his limiter through pushing his body beyond what it would normally be capable of, to the point he was reduced commonly to a near-death state. The only way to defeat Saitama would be to take someone and do the same to him. They begin to wonder if there were anyone who would be able to do this. Sadly, the only thought that could come to Bang's mind was Garo. While his personality sort of sucked, he was highly skilled, and he truthfully wasn't an evil person. He was just frustrated with hero society. He often would do like Saitama and search for heroes to fight, but he never killed them like Saitama had. So they pulled Garo into their group and explained what Saitama's doing. Garo wouldn't seem too upset about it. He would identify himself closer to a monster anyway. They would state that Saitama was a hero gone rogue, and that maybe what they needed wasn't another hero, but a monster. After some debate, they would convince Garo to enter their group, who would begin to train. But merely training wasn't enough. Garo was getting stronger, yes, and he was already strong from all of the villains and heroes he had met, but he hadn't broken his limiter yet or become a monster. Back with Psychos and Saitama, they would be trying to make more monsters with broken limiters, but the way this was going wasn't working. She would take her time to release them to the world to cause havoc, and this would be where Garo would be doing most of the fighting, pushing himself beyond and into near-death states and then being pulled back. The more he fought, the closer to death he came, until the heroes began to wonder if this was ethical, but Garo seemed willing to keep going. He continued to do this and would slowly begin to evolve, awakening into a monster himself the more he fought, and then eventually it would happen. Once they were certain that he could do it, they would take him out to find Saitama, betting everything they could on him. Upon witnessing Garo's awakened strength in a fight against Elder Centipede, Saitama would grow interested in him and his growth. Saitama would eventually go out to fight against him. Garo would not only have comparable strength, but he would also possess incredible technique. The two would begin to fight, and for a while they would both be on equal footing and growing at a similar rate. However, Saitama did not possess the same conviction that Garo had. Garo was going to prove that a monster could beat a hero and be loved for it. Gero's strength slowly began to push beyond Saitama to the point where they feared the battle might threaten the whole planet, if not the entire universe. Together they would fight, and Saitama would eventually have to break out his true serious series attacks where he goes into his full power, which, to his joy, Gero could match blow for blow. Eventually, Gero would grow beyond Saitama and bring him down. As Saitama lay defeated, all he could do was smile, realizing he had finally gotten what he wanted. And in the moments when his life was fading away, he could finally understand why Boros seemed so pleased while he was dying. Saitama would eventually pass, having lost to Gero, who would then take his place as the new One Punch Man. But this does not mean the threats are gone. Beyond this, Psychos is still making monsters, though at this point it's doubtful that they could catch Gero, who would become the heroic monster. But there still did remain a single enemy out there that could be a threat to mankind. The being known only by the moniker God was still out there and waiting for its moment to escape its realm and end humanity. But for now, this is where the story ends. So, what did you think? The concept that someone is able to surpass Saitama is interesting, especially considering the memed out nature of Saitama's power. But it is true that Saitama is getting bored with his power, or more like the lack of his ability to find anyone who he can truly use it against. Saitama isn't too far removed from Boros in that way. Boros is actually a good idea of what Saitama would be like as a villain, and I hope I was capable of portraying that accurately here. Let me know in the comments below how the video did for you. If you liked it, consider giving it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you haven't already. It helps the channel out tons. Be sure to ring the bell and be notified when we drop a new video. Peace out.